ATP pace levels are an enzyme that controls the breakdown and synthesis of ATP for energy. This content goes from low to high when going from slow oxidative fibers to fast oxidative glycolytic. Slow oxidative fibers use aerobic metabolism to produce low power contractions over long periods and are slow to fatigue. Fast oxidative fibers use aerobic metabolism to produce ATP but produce higher tension contractions than slow oxidative fibers. Low oxidative fibers contract pretty slowly and use aerobic respiration to produce ATP energy. More ATP can be produced during each metabolic cycle, making the fiber more resistant to fatigue. Fast glycolytic fibers primarily create ATP through anaerobic glycolysis, which produces less ATP per cycle. Oxidative capacity is the capacity of the muscle fiber to use oxygen for the production of energy. For slow oxidative, it is high. Then for fast oxidative, it's intermediate, and finally, glycolytic is low. The contraction rate varies. With slow oxidative contractions, they are slow, around 90 to 140 ms, but you can keep contracting over a long period of time, whereas fast oxidative are fast, around 50 to 100 ms, and fast glycolytic are very fast, being around 40 to 90 ms. Slow oxidative fibers can resist fatigue the best, as they have to keep contracting over a very long period of time, such as in a marathon run, whereas fast oxidative and fast oxidative glycolytic, they are less resistant to fatigue. Glycolytic fibers will fatigue the fastest because they contract and use the most energy. The force from each produced varies. Because the slow oxidative fibers produce the least powerful contractions, the force generated from these are low. Then, for the next most powerful fiber, fast oxidative, these produce high force, followed by fast glycolytic fibers, which produce very high force. This is why these fibers will be used in very short sprinting races, because they can give out a burst of great force. However, for this reason, they fatigue the most and the fastest. Slow oxidative fibers use aerobic metabolism to make low power contractions, which will work over long periods of time and are slow to fatigue. Fast oxidative fibers are used in aerobic metabolism to produce ATP energy, but they produce higher tension contractions than slow oxidative fibers, so they fatigue at a higher rate than slow oxidative fibers, and they also contain some anaerobic respiration other than aerobic respiration. Fast oxidative fibers are used in aerobic metabolism to produce ATP energy, but they produce higher tension contractions than slow oxidative fibers, so they fatigue at a much bigger rate than slow oxidative fibers. The higher the recruitment of muscle tissue, the stronger the muscle contraction will be. Motor units are normally recruited in the order of smallest to largest, therefore slow to fast twitch, and as contraction increases. The first fiber there would be to contract is the slow twitch oxidative fibers. Slow twitch fibers support long distance running endurance activities like marathon running, while fast twitch muscle fibers allow quick, powerful movements such as sprinting and weightlifting. Now we've moved on to muscle contraction, and we'll go into this now. So in order for muscle contraction to occur, a nerve impulse has to travel from a stimulus, which is picked up by receptors, for example in your ears or eyes. They will detect a ball rolling towards you, for example when you're playing football. From the receptors, an electrochemical impulse is sent along the sensory neurons to the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and spine. Here, the impulse travels through the central nervous system on a relay neuron and finally sets off down the motor neuron, which has a job of delivering the impulse at the effectors. Along the neuron, the nervous impulses jump along structures called myelin sheath. This is the insulating layer around the neuron and adds to the speed of transmission. The jumping movement is known as solitary conduction, and the gaps which the impulse jumps between are the nodes of Ranvier. Once the impulse is at this stage, each nerve ending connects to a muscle, which is the effector. There is a rule called the all or none law, where every single muscle fibre has to be connected or none of it will contract. At the crossover by the synapse, there are small sacs called vesicles, which contain a chemical store called ACH. It's a neuron transmitter. The vesicle splits open and releases the ACH, and if enough of the transmission spread, there will be a contraction. Just to recap that, the ACH binds to the receptors on the motor end plate of the muscle fibre, and if there is enough secreted and the electrical charge is high enough, the muscles can contract. When looking at muscles, particularly skeletal muscles, you'll know that they consist of fascicles. These consist of muscle fibres, and then the muscle fibres consist of myofibrils. And then the myofibrils consist of sarcomeres, followed by the sarcomeres consisting of myofilaments, and then these myofilaments are made of actin and myosin proteins. The neuromuscular junction is the more complex stuff of what I was just saying in the old slide, how once the impulse is at the end of the axon, there are vesicles in which hold the ACH, and when these burst, they travel along the synapse, as you can see in this diagram, which is the gap between the neuron and the muscle, and then if enough is transmitted, then the muscle will be able to contract, which will cause movement, and therefore the person can respond to the stimulus. For the sliding filament theory, the person firstly senses a change in environment or something to respond to. This impulse travels over the neurons by solitary conduction. At the end of the neuron, there are vesicles which contain ACH, which spill over the synapse, and the impulse is picked up at the other end. This impulse then travels through T-tubules. The impulse then reaches the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which releases calcium, which is vital. As you can tell, calcium binds to troponin and moves. This means that the actin binding site is free as myosin A crossbridge. As I said, it's free as myosin A crossbridge is formed after that, and then this means that more ATP can be released over the crossbridge. As this happens, the myosin heads split the ATP and they basically become more energized and powered. This means that the myosin heads can bind to actin, forming cross bridges. The myosin heads can move around and rotate towards the center of the sarcomere, and as the myosin heads bind ATP, the cross bridge detaches from actin as a result. And now finally for the types of muscle contraction. So we've got eccentric. This is an isotonic contraction where the muscle lengthens. Concentric is an isotonic contraction where the muscle shortens, becomes smaller. Then we've also got isotomic, which is a muscular contraction in which the length changes, so it could be extends or contracts and becomes smaller. And then isometric is a muscular contraction in which the length of the muscle does not change. So this can be found across lots of different muscles in the body. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for watching, and here's a list of references that I used for this presentation. Thank you.